Howdy and welcome back. I'm Jake Donnelly and I'm here with another Jake Take. So I got to watch Don't Look Up this weekend, and I did not know a single thing about this movie when I sat down to watch it. So when the opening credits started and the scroll started naming all of the actors and actresses in the movie, I thought to myself, this thing is going to be awesome. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Ron Perlman, Hellboy? Oh, hell yes! I was excited to watch this movie. Hell, even Meryl Streep and Jonah Hill, these are all people that have made me laugh in my past. So, when I was told that this thing was going to be a parody and it was going to be a satire, I thought, this is... Be still my heart. This is going to be great. Yeah, about that. This movie sucked. It is officially in my top 3 worst movies of all time. Number 3, Don't Look Up. Number 2, The Revenant. Number 1, that Alexander the Great movie with Colin Farrell, which is by far the worst movie I have ever watched in my entire life. And I don't think anything will come close to it. It is weird, by the way, that I have 2 movies with Leonardo DiCaprio that are in my top 3 worst movies of all time, but hell, the guy is a great actor, but when he misses the mark, he misses it by a country mile. And this thing totally missed the mark. The reason is, it's too heavy-handed. There's no subtlety in this movie. Within 5 to 10 minutes, you recognize what it is. It's an allegory for climate change. But again, the problem is, this is supposedly a satire, an allegory about climate change featuring a bunch of actors and actresses who are climate change activists. So what you get is a movie that has zero subtlety. This movie is about as subtle as dropping a piano off of the Empire State Building. That's about as subtle as this thing is. It's about as subtle as the purported asteroid that is heading its way to Earth in the movie itself. Because there's literally a point in this climate change allegory parody movie where Jennifer Lawrence, a climate change activist, stares directly into the camera and swears and yells and says, "The world is going to end!" Because again, they're trying to get people to listen to climate change. But when you're that heavy-handed, it's not parody. There's no satire. When the entire movie is essentially just different people using different accents, but saying the same words of Greta Thunberg over and over and over again for about, 2.5 hours, and that's another problem. It's a slow-moving movie that goes nowhere. I don't understand how the plot was terrible from the get-go, and everything they do is dumber than the next thing. Scary Movie, Leslie Nielsen, Mel Brooks, all of these people who have nailed parodies throughout their lives, who have satirized everything that they see in their film careers, probably look at this thing and go, don't think you understand parody. I don't think you understand satire. There are no jokes in this movie. Literally, there are no jokes. There's one running gag, which is really funny, the general charging people stuff. That's funny. But nothing else is funny. Everything else is just, awkward premise after awkward premise after awkward premise, or heavy-handed thing about climate change, heavy-handed thing about climate change. Nothing changes throughout the movie. There's no progression in the movie itself. It's 160 minutes of listening to Greta Thunberg, but with sometimes better facial features, sometimes with more easily understood accents, but in general, it's a terrible movie. Even for trying to do what it wants to do, this is the wrong vehicle with which to do it, and these are the wrong people steering and pushing the gas pedals with which to do it. A bunch of actors and actresses talking about climate change has really never struck me that well. Why? Well, because I don't spend or leave nearly as big of a carbon footprint as any of these actors and actresses who go and fly on their private jets to tell you that you need to lower your carbon footprint. They tell you that you need to change to an electric car as they fly on that private jet, leaving and giving off more carbon dioxide emissions. These are also the people, and while yes, I am on the right side, I just disagree with how to go about alleviating the problems of climate change. That's where I am on the right, because climate change is real. But I don't think getting on a private jet to tell people that they're doing stuff bad for the climate is the way to go about this. I don't think that I should have to listen to actors and actresses tell me what I have to do to alleviate the problems of climate change when they're buying houses on the coast, on the water, and then telling me that the sea levels are rising. Because if it was really that much of an emergency, you wouldn't buy that house right on the water. And they don't have any wherewithal, which is the problem with this film. They don't have any self-awareness that they are the worst people to be delivering this message to a worldwide audience. Somehow that just never gets through to them. And the way that they try to make fun of the average American shows you that they don't have anything in common with the average American. And of course, we, and by we I mean me, can make the argument that this is an extremely racist narrative that the climate change activists are trying to push, because what they're saying is that everybody in the world, every single country, needs to come together to fight climate change. But what they mean by that is, if you're in the first world or the second world, if you're one of those countries, you're good. We've made it. We need to stop all of our emissions. But if you're in a developing country, if you're somebody that has to actually burn dung, manure, in order to heat your house, you can't have the better priced and more, by the way, efficient nuclear energy. You can't have fracking. You can't have any of these things which would help your life right now, because the world and the climate is changing incrementally. And all of the things that these climate activists are proposing are not really going to put a dent into the climate issue whatsoever. So when somebody like me says and watches a movie like Don't Look Up, and I respond with, "You're the worst possible people on earth to try to get this message across, and you did it over the span of 160 minutes and somehow did not do a single thing funny with the exception of the general gag," that's not going to cut it. It's not a funny movie. There's no jokes in it. This is such a far cry from a scary movie. It's not even in the same realm as anything Mel Brooks has ever done. You watch those and you're like, oh, he gets it. He can make fun of those people because he at least understands those people and he respects them enough to understand them. The climate change activists and the jokes that they try to make in this movie, they clearly have no respect for any of the people on the other side of the aisle. So what you get is a movie that is so heavy-handed, it's like smacking you over and over and over again. And yet, nothing. It's the most, or I should say least, effective vehicle I have ever seen. And to do it in a movie that is purportedly a parody, but doesn't have anything funny in it, is like the weirdest thing I've ever seen. So you're watching satire, you're watching a parody, but there's nothing funny. And not like in the "there's nothing funny because the world is actually ending" thing that they are trying to tell you about. I mean, like, nothing funny. Like, I can see every joke. Like Jonah Hill telling Jennifer Lawrence, "You want to come in?" and then shuts the door. Like, everybody knew that that was going to happen. And every joke you can see from a mile away. So when you watch a movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Ron Perlman, Jonah Hill, Meryl Streep, and a bunch of other people that know how to deliver lines, and then you realize that you've now watched and wasted more than 2.5 hours of your life in this movie that is just a climate change allegory that does nothing to convince anybody, then what the hell was the point of the movie? Like, seriously, what was the point of this movie? Was it to make people laugh? Because it wasn't funny. Was it to get people to be more aware about climate change? Well, you really didn't do that because we've got Greta Thunberg, and actually, even though I disagree with almost literally every single thing she says with how to help and alleviate the climate issue, that was more bearable and shorter than this movie. It was one of the most interminable, least funny, completely sophomoric movies I've ever seen in my entire life. So hey, if you don't want to waste more than 2.5 hours of your life, don't look up, don't look down, or just simply close your eyes if somebody puts Don't Look Up on. Because that, and then stick a couple of cotton balls in your ears, would be a much, much better decision for your life and the life of those that you love than watching Don't Look Up. So don't watch, don't look up. Do yourself the favor. All right, that will do it for me. God, I really did hate that movie. And I like Leonardo DiCaprio, so it's weird that 2 of my 3 least favorite movies of all time have him in it. But there is a theme. Movies that are so heavy-handed and so long that I just want to turn it off halfway through because I know it's going to suck. And, well, this movie really sucked. Thank you for listening. I'm Jake Donnelly with another Jake Take. I'll be back soon with another thing that will anger me. I don't know what that is right now. But until then, folks, have a great night. Bye. And really, don't watch Don't Look Up. It's a terrible movie.